In the last 72 hours, something the entire Washington establishment feared most has been quietly unfolding behind closed doors. And if you think this is just another impeachment circus, you are more dangerously uninformed than the people inside the Capitol right now. One vote? Let that sink in. 218 to 217. A single vote separating constitutional action from institutional collapse. This is not a margin. This is a warning siren. This is the first domino falling in a sequence nobody can fully control. And here is what the mainstream media will not tell you. I have access to internal phone calls, sealed memos that have not been made public, and conversations happening in rooms where cameras are not allowed. What I am about to reveal in the next 20 minutes will not appear on CNN, Fox, or any major outlet, because they either do not have it or they are too afraid to say it out loud. So, subscribe right now. I mean it. Hit that button, because the three scenarios I am walking through today, especially scenario 3, will keep you up at night. Turn on notifications. Set them to all. You do not want to miss what is coming. The number 218 to 217 is not just a vote count, it is a fault line. It is the thinnest ice American democracy has ever stood on. And to understand why, you need to see what this margin actually means in historical context. When Richard Nixon faced impeachment in 1974, the House Judiciary Committee voted with overwhelming numbers. 412 members were prepared to impeach. When Bill Clinton was impeached in 1998, the margin was 228 to 206, still decisive. When Donald Trump was impeached the first time in 2019, it was 230 to 197 clear majorities. But this time, one vote. One single vote is all that stands between action and paralysis. This is not unity. This is fracture. This is half of Congress convinced the country is facing an existential emergency, while the other half believes the process itself is the weapon being used against them. Those positions do not compromise. They harden. Now let me tell you what nobody is talking about. 3 Republican members who voted yes have effectively ended their political careers inside their own party. They know it. Their donors know it. 2 Democratic members who voted yes will likely lose their seats in 2026. The political cost of that vote was catastrophic for everyone involved. But here is the detail that matters most. The identity of vote number 218, the person who cast the deciding ballot. That name is being protected right now because the threats, both political and personal, have been relentless. Phone, calls from mega donors, pressure from party leadership, and according to sources, direct contact from individuals close to Trump himself. This is not about courage. This is about survival. And the question everyone in Washington is asking right now is simple. If the cost was this high to get to 218, what will it take to get to 67 in the Senate? 67. That is the number that haunts every single person involved in this process. Because the House does not remove presidents, it accuses them. The Senate is where the real power lies. And the math there is not just difficult, it is borderline impossible. Here is the formula. 50 Democrats plus 3 independents equals 53 votes. To convict and remove Donald Trump, you need 67. That means 14 Republicans have to cross party lines. 14 out of 49. That is 28.5% of the Republican caucus turning against their own party's leader. Let me be clear. That does not happen. Not in modern politics. Not with this level of base loyalty. Not with primary threats hanging over every single vote. The incentive structure is designed to prevent exactly this outcome. But, and this is critical, there are 3 scenarios where 67 becomes possible. 3 exceptions to the impossible math. And all 3 are currently in play. Scenario A, the smoking gun. A piece of evidence so devastating, so undeniable that defending Trump becomes more dangerous than abandoning him. We are talking about a recording, an email chain, a witness flipping with direct knowledge. Think Watergate. When those Nixon tapes were released, Republican support collapsed within 24 hours. Senators who swore loyalty the day before were calling for resignation the day after. If evidence of that magnitude surfaces during the trial, 67 votes could materialize faster than anyone expects. Scenario B, the donor exodus. And here is where I need you to pay very close attention, because this is happening right now. 7 of the largest Republican megadonors have quietly stopped writing checks. The Koch network, one of the most powerful funding machines in American politics, has gone completely silent. No statements, no contributions, no public defense of Trump. And then there is Peter Thiel, a man who once supported Trump enthusiastically, who poured millions into Trump-aligned candidates. Every single tweet he ever posted about Trump has been deleted, gone, scrubbed from his timeline as if they never existed. When the money stops flowing, loyalty evaporates. Because here is what people outside Washington do not understand. Politicians do not fear voters as much as they fear donors. Voters come every 2 years. Donors decide whether you can even compete. And if the donor class has decided Trump is a liability, if they believe he is now a destabilizing force that could cost them a decade of losses, then suddenly those 14 votes start looking achievable. Scenario C, the Pence factor. Mike Pence is the wild card nobody is talking about loudly enough. If Mike Pence publicly supports conviction, if he stands in front of cameras and says Donald Trump is unfit to hold office, 20 Republican senators will follow him within 48 hours. That is not speculation. That is the read from inside the Senate right now. Pence has more credibility with the evangelical base than Trump ever did. He has relationships with old guard Republicans that Trump burned years ago. And most importantly, Pence has nothing left to lose politically. He is not running again. He has no future in a Trump-controlled party, which means he is free to tell the truth without fear of retaliation. And here is the breaking detail. According to sources close to Senate leadership, Pence has been asked directly by multiple senators whether he would consider making a public statement, not just a quiet background comment, a full televised address. The question has been posed, and Pence has not said no. In fact, there are reports that he will hold a press conference within the next 96 hours. The scheduling is being finalized. The location is being secured. And if that happens, if Pence steps forward and says what everyone suspects he believes, the entire calculation changes overnight. But even with all 3 scenarios in play, there is still one constitutional mechanism that could bypass the Senate entirely, and it is the most dangerous option on the table. The 25th Amendment, Section 4. On paper, it sounds almost theatrical. The Vice President, joined by a majority of the Cabinet, can declare the President unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and the moment that declaration is signed, authority transfers immediately. Not after a trial, not after debate immediately. The President loses command of the military. The nuclear codes are transferred. Executive orders can no longer be issued. It is the closest thing America has to a constitutional ejection button, and it requires no input from Congress to activate. But here is the problem, the same problem that has prevented this from ever being seriously considered. Who goes first? Which cabinet member is willing to stand up in front of the entire country and tell their boss he is no longer in charge, because that person becomes the most hated figure in Trump's political universe instantly? These are people Donald Trump personally selected, people who owe their careers, their profiles, their entire political futures to him. And now you are asking them to publicly declare him unfit. That is not just disloyalty. In Trump's world, That is betrayal. And betrayal gets punished loudly, permanently. So the 25th Amendment sits there like a nuclear weapon that nobody wants to touch. Everyone knows it exists. Everyone knows. It could work. But nobody wants to be the person who presses the button. Except there is another problem buried inside this mechanism that makes it even more complicated. Trump can fight back within 4 days of being declared unable to serve. He can send a letter to Congress disputing the claim, and the moment he does that, Congress has to vote both chambers, and the threshold is not 51%. It is 2-3-2-3 of the House and 2-3 of the Senate. That is a higher bar than impeachment conviction higher, which means even if the cabinet manages to invoke Section 4, even if they find the courage to take that step, Trump can force the entire system into a vote that is even harder to win than the trial currently underway. But here is what should terrify you. According to a source inside the Department of Justice, 4 cabinet members have already quietly retained private attorneys. Not White House counsel, not government lawyers, private attorneys, the kind you hire when you are preparing for personal legal exposure. Why would they need that? Why would sitting cabinet members, people currently serving in the administration, suddenly decide they need independent legal representation? Because someone somewhere is telling them that what comes next could have consequences. Legal consequences, political consequences, personal consequences, and there is more. The Secretary of Defense has reportedly refused to take phone calls from certain White House advisors over the last 72 hours. Not declined politely, refused. His staff has been told to screen calls, to not put certain people through. That is not normal. That is not protocol. That is someone creating distance. That is someone protecting themselves. Something is being prepared. Some kind of contingency. Some kind of fallback plan. And the people closest to the levers of power are acting like they know it is coming. But even the 25th Amendment, as dramatic as it sounds, is not the worst-case scenario. It is not even close. Because all of these mechanisms, impeachment, the 25th Amendment, Senate conviction, they all assume one thing. They assume Donald Trump will accept the outcome. And what happens if he does not? What happens if the Senate votes 68-32 to convict and remove, and Trump simply says no? What happens if he tweets, "I am still your president," and refuses to leave the Oval Office? What happens when the constitutional process produces a result and the person it applies to rejects its legitimacy entirely? That is when we enter the nightmare scenario. That is when the crisis stops being legal and starts being existential. Imagine this. The Senate votes. 68 senators vote to convict. The Chief Justice announces the result. Donald Trump is no longer President of the United States. Kamala Harris is sworn in. Constitutionally, legally, it is done. But then Trump sends a tweet. "I am still your president. This was a coup. I do not recognize this illegal process." And he stays in the White House. He does not pack his belongings. He does not board Marine One. He refuses to leave. Now what? Who enforces the constitutional outcome? Who physically removes a former president who believes he is still the legitimate commander-in-chief? The Secret Service. They are sworn to protect the president. But who is the president in that moment? The person the Constitution says is president, or the person who refuses to accept that he is not. General Charles Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, becomes the most important person in America at that exact second, because whoever he recognizes as commander-in-chief, that is who the military follows. And if he hesitates, if he waits even 24 hours to make that call, the uncertainty spreads like a virus through every level of government. State governors start making their own decisions. The governor of Texas announces he does not recognize the Senate vote as legitimate. Florida follows. Ohio follows. Suddenly, you have 27 Republican governors refusing to take orders from the new administration. Federal agencies do not know who to report to. The FBI, Homeland Security, the Treasury, all of them caught between two competing claims of authority. This is not a constitutional crisis anymore. This is a legitimacy crisis. And history shows us exactly how dangerous those can become. In 1876, the presidential election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden was so disputed that the country came within days of another civil war. It was only resolved through backroom deals that ended Reconstruction and abandoned millions of Black Americans to Jim Crow for the next century. In 1933, Germany faced a similar constitutional ambiguity. Hitler did not destroy the Weimar Constitution. He just made it irrelevant. He used emergency powers, legal mechanisms that existed on paper, and turned them into tools of absolute control and Turkey in 2016. Recep Erdogan used a failed coup attempt, real or staged. Historians still debate that to purge the judiciary, the military, the press, and consolidate power in ways the Turkish constitution was specifically designed to prevent. The document still exists. The institutions still exist on paper, but they mean nothing in practice. The common thread in all three cases: no one thought it could happen to them. Germany had one of the most advanced constitutional systems in Europe. Turkey was a NATO ally with democratic institutions. America in 1876 had just fought a civil war to preserve the Union. But institutions are only as strong as the people willing to defend them. And when those people are afraid, when they are calculating their own survival, when they are choosing between principle and self-preservation, institutions collapse faster than anyone expects. So the question is not whether America is different. The question is whether Americans right now in this moment are willing to do what is necessary to make sure the outcome holds. And that brings us to the factor no one can model, no one can predict. The reaction of 330 million people. I have obtained 3 simulations, 3 models of how the public could respond if we enter that legitimacy crisis. These were created by a research group inside the Department of Homeland Security. They are classified. They are not supposed to exist outside secure facilities. But I have seen them, and I am going to walk you through all 3. Simulation 1 is passive acceptance. Simulation 2 is controlled protest. Simulation 3 is the rupture. And if you think January 6th, 2021 was bad, if you think that was the worst America could experience, Simulation 3 will show you exactly how much worse it can get. Stay with me, because what I am about to describe is not hypothetical. It is a roadmap the federal government is actively preparing for. Simulation 1. Passive acceptance. In this model, 60% of the American public is simply exhausted. They are tired of political chaos, tired of breaking news, tired of constitutional crisis. They hear the Senate has voted to remove Trump. They see him refuse to leave, and they just shrug. They go to work. They pick up their kids from school. They keep living their lives. The outcome, whatever it is, gets absorbed into the system without major disruption. If Trump leaves, fine. If he stays, fine. If there is some negotiated middle ground, fine. The public accepts it because they do not have the energy to fight anymore. In this scenario, institutions win by default, not because they are strong, but because no one challenges them. The crisis resolves quietly, but the long-term damage is permanent. Trust in democracy erodes, voter participation drops. Cynicism becomes the default setting for an entire generation. This is the outcome most people in Washington are hoping for, not because it is good, but because it is survivable. Simulation 2. Controlled protests. In this version, millions take to the streets. Cities see mass demonstrations: Washington, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. Peaceful marches, signs, chants. It looks like the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. Large, sustained, but ultimately manageable. Law enforcement monitors. The National Guard is placed on standby but not deployed. The system absorbs the pressure. Politicians feel the heat, and eventually some kind of negotiated resolution emerges. Reforms get promised, committees get formed, the anger gets channeled into process. This scenario keeps the system intact while allowing public frustration to be expressed. It is loud but controlled, disruptive but not destructive. Subscribe right now, not tomorrow, not later tonight. Right now, hit that button. Turn on notifications. Set them to all. Do not be the last person to know what is coming. The next video drops in 24 hours, and I am revealing the names of 5 senators currently wavering. Names you will not see anywhere else. That video is for subscribers only. It will not be public. Drop a comment below. Which scenario do you think happens? The Senate convicts, Trump survives, or do we enter the nightmare scenario where legitimacy itself collapses? The top comment gets a full breakdown in the next video. History is being written right now, and you are watching it happen in real time. See you in 24 hours. If we still have a country to talk about,